This is where I think I'm going to get to the good figures, because coming in at number 10 is Legacy Evolution Armada Megatron. To anyone familiar with the Unicron trilogy, this was your Megatron in the 2000s. And what a unique design this Megatron was, both as a toy and as a character. Because I like this figure. He has its problem. This figure has problems, but it is better than the Combiner Wars retool that we got all those years ago, which again was a piece of shit because it was a redeco of Combiner Wars Megatron with Armada Megatron's head. But this Megatron, being based on the Armada design and character, really pulls off all the looks that you want from this rendition of the character. One thing I do like that they made optional is that you can take the tank barrel, fold in either of his hands, and place it right there. My one gripe with this figure that you may have seen, and I will get into a review of as well, but I will mention here, is that the shoulders are a pain in the ass, because when you move the arms out, they kind of droop down with it, and trying to move them forward, well, there's a panel that allows, the panel on the front allows it to move forward. So while that's, you know, all well and good, the shoulders, they kind of suck. Whoops. And on my copy, the tank barrel has a tendency to come undone, and just like how he did in the original Armada cartoon and toy, he can pull off his attack mode, where the entire back, which was the tank, can rotate, and I did a fix to where he can actually rotate the full 360, because Hasbro knew what they were doing by not making this tank barrel rotate the full 360. This is why, because dirty joke. And yes, I will bring up dirty jokes. So it's like Hasbro knew what they were doing when they made this figure. So yeah, and putting him next to Armada Starscream, who I will mention in his own review and in a different video that I am gonna allude to. I like this figure. The only problems is really just the shoulders, but that's not gonna deter me from, you know, actually handling him, messing around with him, transforming him. And again, still better than that Combiner Wars retool that we got back in fucking 2016, however long it's been. And I do recommend this to anyone who's a fan of Transformers Armada, anyone who loves Megatron, or, you know, is trying to have a new Armada collection. One thing that is a complaint, he doesn't come with his Minicon Leader 1, which Hasbro needs to rectify if they're going to release him in Galvatron colors, because they are going to do Armada Galvatron, and we've also gotten the reveal of Armada Tidal Wave. So yeah. Coming in at the 9th spot is Legacy Evolution Voyager class Twincast. Now, for those of you who are wondering why Twincast is on the list, well, I never got Legacy/Kingdom, Blaster, and Eject. I got Twincast for a couple of reasons because of that. I never got Blaster. Twincast, for those of you who do not know, is Blaster reincarnated, and he comes with Rewind. Now, I know there are some fans and collectors complaining about how Blaster came with Eject and Twincast comes with Rewind. And I also understand that there's IDW fans out there who would only get this just for Rewind, or do their own custom and repaint Eject into Rewind, to which I say, really guys? Really? y'all are gonna skip out on this figure just because he comes with Rewind, but you don't like the color scheme. You don't like the fact that he comes with the one cassette that y'all care for, because probably due to IDW, y'all care more about Rewind than you do Eject, which disrespectful. And the reason why he's a bit higher on the list is because this is a good mold. He comes with Rewind. And, you know, if you guys missed out on Blaster, and I'm pretty sure there are some who did, I do recommend getting Twincast, because, you know, he essentially is Blaster reincarnated. Again, the character originated from the Headmasters, because for those of you who do not know or aren't familiar with the Headmasters anime, it was a continuation of the G1 cartoon but it was doing its own take of Season 4, because Season 4 of the G1 cartoon, which was the Rebirth as a whole, Takara Tomy opted not to import Season 4 of the G1 cartoon and instead make the Headmasters anime a sequel. And in that sequel, Blaster and Soundwave fought each other to death. Both of them died after fighting each other, and their respective teams brought them back to life, with Blaster being Twincast and Soundwave becoming Sound Blaster. Obviously, in recent years, Sound Blaster has taken on a life of his own, not as Soundwave, but as his own character. That is something for another day that I will may or may not talk about. But as it stands, I like this figure, and if you missed out on Blaster, like I said before, you can get him, and especially if you are after Rewind. Coming in at the number 8th spot is going to Toxitron from, you know, the current subline of G2 figures, and Toxitron being the main focus point. Now you might be wondering, why is Toxitron a bit higher on the list? Simply put, it's Toxitron. Like, do I even need to explain? Because we knew from the start that we would eventually get Toxitron and Robots in Disguise 2001 Scourge from the G2 Laser Optimus Prime figure. I have Scourge and I do have Laser Prime. The only reason why I got Laser Prime was because I kind of knew what to expect by the time, you know, I would eventually come home and Scourge would already be at the house. I got Toxitron because, well, the original toy of this character was intended to be released as part of the Universe 2003 toy line back in 2004, where the figure was shown, I believe, at a BotCon convention. I believe he was a BotCon exclusive that was going to be released in 2005, but it never happened. Then he would appear in the Collectors Club and other BotCon-based stories, including one of him in the Transformers animated universe. And he pretty much is just a toxic, you know, green, purple colored Optimus Prime. But I like him just a bit more than the Laser Optimus Prime mold. But obviously, you know, I like Robots in Disguise Scourge. Like, between this and Robots in Disguise Scourge, I like Scourge more. But Toxitron being one of those obscure, like, unknown characters, because I know not a lot of people are going to be interested in Toxitron or know who the character is unless they've read some of the stories. The mold is a good mold, no matter what you get it in. But I understand why people would pass up on this, like how they would pass up on G2 Grimlock or Cloud Cover or any of the other G2 Colors figures, because as of late, Walmart has overstocked on Toxitron and Grimlock, and they have not been going anywhere. Of course, it just means that anyone interested in getting a figure like this would want it. But I understand that not a lot of people would be interested in, like, an obscure or underrated niche, for lack of a better term, character, such as Toxitron. But as it stands, I like this figure. and I will mention Scourge in another video that, again, I may have said before in a previous figure spot that I am alluding to doing. Do I recommend him? Yes. Coming in at the number 7 spot is Studio Series 86 Ratchet. I love this fucking figure. When Ironhide was released in this mold back in 2022, I already knew what to expect. But that is the very reason why Ratchet is higher up on the list, despite, you know, being a new head retool and sharing the same mold. Because this Studio Series 86 Ratchet Ironhide mold is a peak mold, because it does everything right that the Earthrise figures did wrong. What do I mean by that? Well, to anyone who may not know, let me refresh your memory. The Earthrise Ratchet and Ironhide figures, who were exclusives, and were hard to find exclusives, Ironhide came in a 2-pack with Prowl, under the same Amazon release as Dirge and Ramjet, who I may have mentioned previously, whereas Ratchet came packaged with Lifeline as part of a Galactic Odyssey set of figures during the Earthrise line, and that Ratchet was hard to find. The Shattered Glass redeco that came with Shattered Glass Prime as part of Gen Selects was a bit easy to find, because Gen Selects is an online store exclusives, and online store exclusives are a bit easier to find when they're not sold out. But this figure is pretty much giving us the Earth mode Ratchet and Ironhide that we wanted since the Earthrise line started, and the Earthrise Ratchet and Ironhide were retools of the Siege Ratchet and Ironhide. One good thing that this Ratchet does is make him a mainline release, because as many of you may not be aware, or if you are aware, Siege Ratchet was a Walgreens exclusive, meaning he was going to be near impossible to find, and Earthrise Ratchet being yet again another exclusive meant he was going to be hard to find, especially since he was coming with another character, and one that not a lot of people would care about. This figure and its release corrected all of the wrongs of the Earthrise figure and the shit distribution due to the pandemic back in 2020. He comes with both of his iconic guns, and one thing that is peak is the fact that while he does have a little bit of kibble, all this kibble is not a parts forming aspect, because the problem with the Earthrise mold was that it was a parts former, because it was the Siege figure but with Earth mode parts, meaning it had to be a parts former. This figure being a Voyager, though essentially a deluxe size figure, since Ratchet and Ironhide, despite being one of the taller Autobot cars of 1984, is essentially a deluxe-sized figure. But the Voyager price point and engineering means he can be one transformation figure without any of the parts or pieces, you know, having to come off or detach just to benefit the transformation and both modes. And another thing that I do like is that they were able to get this right as well, or at least close enough, because the Red Cross is an insignia that cannot be used on Ratchet anymore, so Hasbro and Takara had to figure out something to do, and they were able to give us this, which is good enough, because, again, if I'm going to say it now, this figure is essentially the best G1 Ratchet we're going to get, and with Ironhide, that was the best G1 Ironhide we were going to get. And speaking of which, I had realized my last figure review as a whole was on Studio Series 86 Ironhide, because my collecting habit really spiraled out of control in 2023 to where I did not focus on any video reviews, because I was constantly stuck at work, and I kind of still, you know, am these days, along with the hype train for Transformers Rise of the Beast, which I will get to in the Studio Series video of all the figures I got from 2023 that were released last year. But yes, I highly recommend this figure for anyone trying to complete their Generation 1 1984 Autobots, and for anyone who just wants a good Ratchet figure, and one that's affordable. Coming in at number 6 spot on my ranking video list goes to Studio Series 86 Brawn. I love this fucking figure as much as I did with Ratchet and Ironhide. He is higher up than Ratchet because he's a new mold, and because this is probably the best figure we're gonna get of G1 Brawn. And I say G1 Brawn because we have this Bumblebee movie Brawn from Studio Series, and that is already a good figure, and that's the reason why I was ready to get this, and also because I never had the Titans Return version of Brawn. And being one of my favorite mini-bots from 1984, I like how it's something that I will get into his own dedicated review on, is that Hasbro did some clever engineering by making the legs become the sort of G1 toy legs, where, for those of you who don't know, Brawn's original G1 toy was essentially on stilts. Like, Brawn's original G1 toy was essentially on stilts. So Hasbro engineered something clever into the leg transformation, since, you know, since his legs house essentially the side and wheels of his alt mode. Now, I do wish he came with the drill that he had in one episode of the cartoon that Studio Series Bumblebee Brawn referenced with. But overall, this is a really good figure, and I recommend it if you are trying to complete the 1984 Autobots and the Transformers the movie cast as a whole, especially since Brawn was the first Autobot to die, and we're likely going to get a battle-damaged version of him and Ratchet in a 2-pack, much like how we recently got one with Prowl and Ironhide, which is quite morbid that Hasbro are releasing our heroes in figure form, but dead. So, yeah, that pretty much sums it up for what I have to say about Brawn and why he's a bit higher up on the list. Again, now I will say my only gripe is that his head really just moves side to side, since it's on a joint that doesn't allow it to go up or down. But there's a lot that goes into this figure, and out of all the mini bots that Hasbro has put out in a deluxe class form, Brawn is now one of my favorites, behind Huffer and Warpath, and any of the other mini-bots that have been released or are gonna be released, like Gears, who, another character for a different video and another time. Now that we are heading to the top 5, number 5 goes to Legacy Evolution Animated Prowl. Can someone play the Transformers animated theme song in the comments section? Because I really love this goddamn figure. I know he's not fully one-to-one accurate with Transformers animated, but at least he's not a wild deviation like some of the Prime characters have been, one of which is going to be on this list, as he is one of the top 3 on this list and in this ranking. But as it stands, talking about my now top 5, going past the bottom 5 of what would be a top 10, I love Prowl. I never owned the original figure or the Samurai release, but as it stands, Animated Prowl is a really good figure and one of the highlights of the Evolution line for Legacy, and I don't think he deserves to be slept on because, again, he comes with the ninja stars that he used in the show, which are from his legs. Of course, it does mean his legs are kind of empty without them. But one complaint that I do have with the figure is that he can't hold both of them, because the left hand has the slots where he can hold it, but the right, you kind of have to futz with it and fix with it in order to get him to hold both of them, which is why I only brought out the one and not him using both. But he's pretty dynamic, as you see here. Like, I love, like, if I'm going to want to pose a figure, and if I'm going to want to get a figure that I want to pose and play around with, Prowl scratches that itch, because I love the head movement. I love how dynamic the arms and legs are. Yes, he's a bit chunkier to his already skinny design from animated, so that would turn some people off. But even so, even if you're if you're a Prowl fan or a Transformers animated fan, I definitely recommend this figure. And yes, eventually, like I keep saying, I will do reviews on each of these figures and characters, and what I like about them, what I don't like about them, because I know Legacy has been hit or miss for some people, especially since, you know, trying to focus on getting everything accurate means series like Animated and Prime kind of lack a bit in regards to that, because those designs were more stylized, and Prowl is an example of animated stylization. And I'll be honest, I do like animated Prowl a bit more than G1 Prowl, because he's a ninja bot and his backstory. But as an overall figure, as he stands, I do love animated Prowl, and even if you missed out on the original, I do still recommend getting this figure, since, again, he's not a wild deviation like some of the Prime characters have been, because at least he still keeps everything, accurate to what the character was in animated. Coming in at the number 4 spot goes to Legacy Evolution Voyager Metalhawk. Now I know what some of you are thinking as to why Metalhawk is higher up on the list when you think he should be lower. I like how this figure is a heavy retool of Cyclonus, to where it was kind of obvious, because if you guys look at the similarities with Cyclonus and Metalhawk, the wings are in a similar spot, because both of them either have the wings on the back or on, you know, the sides. In Metalhawk's case, the wings are supposed to be like on the sides of his arms and not like on the back of the shoulders. But I do like, but again, I like the color scheme. I like the weapons, where he comes with his original sword and his blasters. I will say this, I do like how they went with the more robot mode accurate look that he had in the Super God Master Force anime, which is where this character originated from, because as many of you don't know, Metalhawk originated from Super God Master Force in 1988 in Japan. He did get a little bit of spotlight in the IDW comics back in the 2010s. And being a pretender, he hasn't gotten many figures, and this figure aims to be the best version of him in toy form, since it's going for the robot mode and not necessarily Metalhawk's human mode, because the deal with the pretenders in G1 was that they were essentially Transformers hiding under a human or a monster-esque skin. Because in the Autobots' case, they were essentially armored humans, but in the Decepticons' case, they were monsters. So it made sense for Metalhawk to essentially just be the core inner robot, and not like the pretender shell. Because that's something the Decepticon pretenders in Legacy have been doing, where they've been a hybrid of their inner robots and of their inner robot mode and the outer shells. But as a retool of Cyclonus, I do love Metalhawk. Like I like the poses you can pull off with him, with his weapons. I do love it. I do like how his transformation is different from Cyclonus, which was to be expected, because again, he does share like, half of him he does share from Cyclonus, while the rest of him is new. Because while Cyclonus had, like, a 30-something step transformation, Metalhawk only transforms in, like, what, 18 steps? And again, I will eventually do a review of him at some point this year, in 2024. And again, as it stands, as a retool of Cyclonus, I actually don't mind this. Would he have been in a new mold? Possibly. But I think the Cyclonus retool worked in his favor if they weren't going to make him a new mold. Since, you know, he doesn't share a lot of similarities with... He doesn't have a lot of similarities with a character he has no similarities with in regards to either mode. But where he does have similarities with, at least in regards to the wings and, you know, other parts, I guess it made sense. And yes, I know I've been talking about redecos and retools with, you know, some of the new molds being on this list. But when we get to my top 3 now, that's where you might see, you know, why I like some of these, or why, you know, some of you may not like them. Because I know some of you out there don't like redecos or retools, which has kind of been a thing that Hasbro has done before. Coming in at the joint 3rd spot is Legacy Evolution Lio Convoy. Yes, I'm still calling him by his Japanese name. Fuck off, Leo Prime. And Copy Convoy, or Nemesis Leo, as they're calling him, since, you know, this was essentially the first character to use the idea of Nemesis Prime. But in Japan, obviously, he went by the name of Copy Convoy, or, well, essentially Black Lio Convoy, since he's just a clone of the original. And being the same mold, he has to share a joint spot. What he does differently, however, is he comes with 2 gun pieces that combine or split, depending on what you do with it. And I've kind of given this to other figures that don't have a gun. So, I really love this mold. Like, I really do. I still need to watch Beast Wars 2nd to get into the series and know the characters, because it's a very obscure series, since it was made when Season 1 of Beast Wars concluded in Japan, and, you know, Takara Tomy had to fill for time. But that's a discussion for another day, because as these figures stand, with the original and the imposter, I like both Lios. I like both Leos. Like, okay, he comes obviously with all the bells and whistles. He does have some kibble, but that's accurate to the animation model and original toy. And this is probably my favorite gimmick, with the hidden blades within the lion legs, and the fact that you can reveal the energon matrix he has in his chest, and, well, both their chests. And I like posing him, I like transforming him. He has a complex transformation, which, with movie figures, has kind of, you know, piqued my interest all the time, where if I don't want a figure with a simple transformation, and I want one with a complex conversion, because this mold is neither simple nor complex. It looks simple, but, you know, transformation is 30-something steps, and I do like that. Now, I understand why not a lot of people would be interested in, you know, this mold or these characters, because, again, Beast Wars 2nd is an obscure series, and yet Lio Convoy has single-handedly been the only breakout character, to where Hasbro and Takara are now doing these obscure characters from Beast Wars 2nd, because we already got the Season 1 cast of Beast Wars completed in Legacy with Tarantulas and Inferno, and we're getting some of the later season characters from Season 2 and 3, with obviously Transmetal 2 Megatron and now Tigerhawk. but from Beast Wars 2nd and Beast Wars Neo, because with the announcement of Megatron from Beast Wars Neo, we're likely going to see more of these obscure characters that, you know, the general audience, that being you guys, wouldn't be familiar with. I wouldn't say I'm part of the general audience, but I still need to get into watching Beast Wars 2nd and Beast Wars Neo to know these characters a bit more, because obviously looking them up isn't going to do it enough for me. But as it stands as figures alone, I love both of them. Obviously I love Lio a bit more than, you know, Copy Convoy. And I don't care what Hasbro does, I would like to stick with their original names rather than rename them just for marketing's sake. Because, you know, they kind of had to do that before, where they had to call Lio Convoy Leo Prime with previous toys, and it continues here. And I mean, it's not a deal breaker, because for those of you who don't know, in Japan, convoys are the equivalent of Prime. So like how Optimus Prime is called Convoy, Rodimus is Rodimus Convoy, the list goes on. But I think, you know, I kind of had to put, you know, both these at the third spot, because I like this mold. I like the gimmicks, I like the transformation. There's a lot to love about both of them. And with the case of Copy Convoy or Nemesis Leo, he comes with an extra gun piece, or pieces. Taking the second and runner-up spot on my list is going to both Legacy Evolution Tarn and his retool Bludgeon. Now, before you guys bash me in the comments section, Bludgeon is included here because he's sharing the mold as Tarn. If it was just Tarn alone, and Bludgeon was a new mold, he would have either been placed, he likely would have been placed lower on the list. But because because Hasbro decided to use Tarn for the mold of Bludgeon, they kind of have to share a joint spot. But the focus is Tarn. Like, the focus is really Tarn. Like, the only new things on Bludgeon, aside from the colors, are the head and the sword. Like, that's really it. Because pushing Bludgeon aside and focusing on Tarn, who the mold was obviously originally made out of, because the mold started with Tarn and they just used it for Bludgeon because Hasbro could not make a new mold for him for reasons. This figure is peak as shit. Like, Hasbro has had some peak figures before with the Siege line and the Kingdom line. Earthrise was hit or miss. And recently with Legacy, they have been knocking it out of the park with most, not all, but most figures and characters. Tarn is one of those no exceptions because, well, he's peak. Like, do I even need to explain why this figure is a godsend and beautiful? Like just looking at him alone and holding him alone is like Hasbro went out of their way to make this figure happen. Like, everything about him is accurate to his appearance in the IDW comics, which is where this character originated from. Whereas Bludgeon makes no sense, because they were going for IDW Bludgeon and not G1 Bludgeon. But if they were going for IDW Bludgeon, I don't know why they would use Tarn for the basis of his figure, but that's besides the point, because Tarn is really who I wanted to focus on, and Bludgeon was just like secondary to him. He almost did not make it onto the list, and, you know, I get people would have been happier had I not mentioned him, but I kind of had to mention him just to get the bad one out of the way and the good one in here, because as he stands, like he may not be as bulky as he was in the comics, because in the comics Tarn was a bit bigger, buffer, and bulky, while this figure is a bit slimmed down. But that isn't a bad thing, because he's really fun to pose and mess around with and transform, and the opening hands make all the difference. And again, I will get into dedicated video reviews for each of these characters, because I may have mentioned it before that I was lacking in video reviews throughout 2023 for a lot of reasons. But as Tarn stands, quite literally, there was one figure that I thought kind of had to beat him out a bit, and that kind of has to do with my obsession with leader class figures as a whole. And speaking of, Tarn has been really hard to find, and when Bludgeon was released, he became harder to find as well. And both of them are probably about to start going for astronomical prices on the aftermarket due to, again, poor distribution and the fact that I only saw one of Tarn, and this is and the one I got. Like, I only ever saw one of him, and that's the one you see before you. So I am happy and glad that I snagged Tarn when I had the chance, when I first found him when he got released. Taking the number 1 and top spot on my favorite Legacy, Studio Series 86, and Studio Series Gamer Edition list of figures from 2023 is going to Legacy Evolution Prime Dreadwing. I love this figure because of many reasons. A lot of you that I know, or, have, come across my channel, are most likely Transformers Prime fans, or simps for lack of a better term, and consider it the greatest Transformers show of all time. I don't, because there are other shows like Transformers Animated and Beast Wars. Now, for Dreadwing, he takes the top spot on my list because if I had gotten Skyquake, they both would have taken joint spot. But because I never found Skyquake, who was the first use of the mold, I got lucky when I found Dreadwing. Like, I really did. And I say that because my stores have been hit or miss since 2023. Because there are figures that they stocked and then figures that they didn't. And Skyquake was one of the unfortunate ones who never got stocked. So when Dreadwing did, I had to get him. Like, I really had no choice. Because if I didn't, he would not be in my hands right now. Now, Dreadwing is perhaps the one exception to where he really does come close to being Transformers Prime accurate. He's not fully accurate, I will say that, but he does hit the mark that Bulkhead, Knockout, and RC missed. Because people do not like, because I know there's a lot of you who do not like the Legacy Prime RC mold. And I know there's some of you who like Knockout, despite him being a Studio Series 86 Jazz retool. And I know there's some of you out there who like Bulkhead, but I know the majority of you may not like Bulkhead because he's not Transformers Prime accurate, and he's more or less a cross of Prime, Animated, and IDW. Of course, I see that Legacy Bulkhead is more of IDW than Prime or Animated, given, the design. But with Dreadwing, and to an extent Skyquake if I had him, he scratches that itch and the mark because, well, the cannon Dreadwing comes with is accurate, and the machine gun that Skyquake came with is also accurate. The sword is also accurate, though with both Skyquake and Dreadwing, they had color schemes that matched their cockpits. In the case of Dreadwing, who had red, and Skyquake, I believe, had orange. The colors, the head sculpt, and even to an extent the placement of the wings and the legs are, close enough accurate. Now, we do have an idea that this mold could get used for G1, for the G1 Decepticon Predator Skyquake, because of the shape of the chest and the placement of the wings. Like, the placement of the wings and the chest is really giving off G1 Skyquake vibes, which is probably why they wanted to do Prime Skyquake, and then, eventually do Dreadwing, and with that in mind, they could eventually do the G1 Skyquake, since they already have the mold. The only thing that they would have to change would be the head and the weapons, since G1 Skyquake did not have the same weapons as Prime
Skyquake or Dreadwing. Now, there is a fan mode that, you know, I would do with Dreadwing and I would show off, where if you reverse the wings by folding them onto the front, because the cockpit of Dreadwing is placed on the back, rotate the head and swapping the arms means you would get a semi-accurate Transformers Prime Dreadwing out of this figure. Here's where I will gush over this figure. He is a leader class figure, and as someone who really loves leader class figures, he scratches that itch for me, especially in the sense that, well, he can pose really well with both of his weapons.
And one thing I will mention in his eventual video review is that the sword can fold up into a sort of ammo clip for the cannon for him to use, which is clever engineering on Hasbro's part, even though it's still marked as that stupid Evo Fusion gimmick, and doing this wants to fight me, but yeah. And he really feels like a leader class figure. Like, he's taller than Kingdom Galvatron. Like, this figure is just as tall, if not taller than Kingdom Galvatron, and he's definitely not a Voyager. This figure is not a Voyager, and I am glad that he is a leader, because as many of you know, the old Transformers Prime Dreadwing and Skyquake toys were Voyagers, and probably as a result of that, they had some compromises made to them. While this figure also has some compromises due to him not being fully Transformers Prime accurate, I can excuse that because, you know, they got the head right, the colors right, the weapon right. They even got the jet mode right, and they did nail the jet mode as well. They kind of did that as well with Transformers Prime RC and Knockout, where they were able to get the vehicle modes on point. And again, the only reason why this figure, and, you know, to an extent Skyquake, if I had gotten him, beat out, you know, Legacy Tarn and Lyle Convoy and some of the others is because, again, I am a bit of a sucker for leader class figures. I do love Transformers Prime. I'm not saying it's, you know, I'm not gonna say it's a bad show. Like, it is a really good show. I'm not gonna call it the greatest because there are other shows out there. And I really did love this character, especially since this was the first time Dreadwing had made an appearance in animation, because many of you may not be aware that Dreadwing had not appeared in any previous cartoon or any of the live-action movies. He's mostly been a comic book or toy-only character, and Transformers Prime kind of broke that mold and the trend and put him into the spotlight by making him Skyquake's twin. And I highly recommend him if you are a fan of Transformers Prime, and, you know, you liked the character, and, you know, you enjoy leader class figures regardless of, you know, it being a price point and not so much a size, because there are some examples where, you know, some leader class figures are, you know, the size, but then there are others that are just Voyagers with a bunch of shit. I think I need to stop gushing over this figure now and wrap this up. And I believe that about wraps it up for my ranking of my top favorite figures of 2023. Now keep in mind, these are the figures that were released in 2023, and not the figures that I got in 2023 but were released in a previous year. I am going to make a video talking about my favorite figures of 2023 that were released in 2022, because there were a lot of figures from 2022 that got released in 2023 from both Studio Series and Legacy and Studio Series 86. Those figures I will talk about in different videos following this one, and the other one where I will rank all of the Studio Series figures that I got as part of 2023, as all of these and the Studio Series ones were released in 2023. So I want to thank any of you who did tune in, because I know this video is probably going to be like an hour long by the time I get to like the editing process and
doing all the good shit. But for those of you who enjoyed, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you want to stay tuned for any video reviews or other videos, and even my live streams, because I still intend to go back to doing live streams, because I have been taking a little YouTube break and focusing on the other content of my channel and not just the Transformers portion, because I know there's some of you out there who watch my YouTube channel for the Goosebumps content or the New York City train or bus content, and then those of you who tune in for the Transformers content or my live streams. So I want to make a big fat thank you to all of you who continue to subscribe, like my videos, make comments, talk to me on my social medias, because I want to make it clear that I do still have my social media accounts on Instagram, Discord, and I also have Snapchat. So for anyone who wants to hit me up, I may send links in the description or comment section below. And yes, this video is kind of late because, again, I was caught up with other things. So a little update on myself personally. I was caught up with other things, including work, hence why a video like this and the other videos I have mentioned have been put on the back burner and have been on the back of my mind. So I just wanted to get these out of the way, since I'm a bit late to the, this kind of party, since I never made any posts about it on Instagram or Discord talking about what are my favorite figures, because I kind of wanted to make an actual video talking about what are my favorites, which ones I put as least favorites, and that you will see the other videos that I have mentioned that I will do. So a big fat thank you to all of you, and by the time of this recording, I am now sitting at 2.85 thousand subscribers. So I will see you all in the next one.